Wolfman is the latest Universal classic horror monster to be brought to the modern day. This one once again from Blumhouse Productions, as well as Leigh Whannell, writer and director. He previously brought us The Invisible Man, obviously. So I guess as far as Blumhouse's attempts to do this, this is their second, and Leigh Whannell's involved with both. Do they have any plans for more? Who knows? We'll see. We'll see how this one does, I guess. But this movie is about a modern couple, Blake and Charlotte, played by Julia Garner and Christopher Abbott. Abbott, his father, unfortunately passed away very recently, so they decide, hey, let's make a family trip out of going to his secluded woods house, his house in the woods, secluded from the rest of society, and pack his stuff up, make it a little bit of a family bonding thing, because we need that. Unfortunately, when they get there, there's a wolf man, and then Christopher Abbott gets scratched, and oh my gosh, is it taken over? And then that's the movie. We mentioned The Invisible Man earlier, which I did enjoy when it came out, and I still enjoy about the same to this day. A lot of people also really did. It did well at the box office, and that was like right on the cusp when like COVID was about to happen too, so they got in plenty of time. But just over the years, people have kind of looked to that in high regard. Originally, this movie, if I remember correctly, Ryan Gosling was supposed to be in it, and it was going to be from the director of Blue Valentine and The Place Beyond the Pines. A really great pairing, obviously, but since that didn't work out and they got Leigh Whannell, I wasn't really worried. It was just kind of like, oh, okay, so they've replaced an actor and director who I really love, but they've replaced them with another actor who I'm growing really fond of with these past couple projects of his, and Leigh Whannell. So you know, I'm all good to see what we got here. So I was really anticipating this movie, thought it could be really cool, and there's a lot to really appreciate here. First off, Leigh Whannell, he's been with horror for a very long time, and there are still plenty of instances where he really does know how to craft a sequence. Specifically, I wanted to mention the way they utilize, like, the lighting in some instances, some of the ways they frame up the sequences, because I think I've even complained in another video before, like, sometimes when directors or studios these days film movies, when they're out at night, they don't seem to know how to light them. You know, you'll look back at like a classic movie where it's like, oh yeah, this looks gorgeous, and then you'll look at some other movies from today and it's like, why can't I make out literally anything, you know? But I do think that they did a great job of finding a good balance of like, yeah, you can still make out stuff, but then there are certain times where it's really dark, intentionally, because they'll do this thing where they'll try to hide where exactly a wolfman is, and they do a cool thing where they reveal, you know, it might be even closer than you think. And it's a really cool thing that they set up that I did really enjoy. There's certain moments where they just let a certain thing just play out. Like, I was really like surprised, like I inched forward in my seat like, oh, here we go. At one of the first things in the movie, like a flashback to young Christopher Abbott looking through a gun scope as a kid, and you see like a figure out off in the distance, right? But they don't do a loud noise like a bong, or even like a subtle like a stinger coming in with like a doo, like strings or something like that. It's completely silent except for just like the noise of the woods, just the natural sounds of the woods. But you see it off in the distance, and it's like, oh, that is, it really just made my horror heart sing, you know? Like, Leigh Whannell, he is a very competent and very talented filmmaker. There's a lot of cool stuff here, especially how they embraced this Wolfman design, the look of it. From what I understand, if there is any visual effects involved, it's kept very minimally. They really wanted to emphasize the practical effects nature of it, and it looks fantastic. As I mentioned in the plot summary, there are, you know, you got Christopher Abbott kind of taking over, and then there's another Wolfman lurking about, and, you know, there's little differences for both designs. I thought they both looked really great. It looks really cool, and Abbott especially. Like, I know Leigh Whannell said he drew inspiration from The Fly, you know, famous body horror movie, and I'm sure there's some other ones, but The Fly is obviously, when you think of body horror, The Fly is usually like at the top of the list. And obviously I really love seeing that transformation happen, because instead of just like a very quick thing that you'll see in like a lot of Wolfman werewolf movies, like, oh, hair is growing and oh, you know, very quick. This is just like the slow descent where like it's kind of like a tragic thing when you realize he can't quite understand what his family is saying anymore. It's like they're speaking a different language and he's like failing to communicate. It's honestly, like, it's really kind of fucked up what they do, you know, as far as like that transformation taking so long, and it's so grotesque, and there's just so many details to it, you know, in such a short amount of time. They really made me feel the impact as far as like what it's doing to his body. Like, I feel it, and I don't want to be in that position. I don't want to be a fucking wolf man. So as far as like the technical aspects of this film go, you know, it's going off on all cylinders, essentially. A great musical score to back it up, some great cinematography, use of lighting, you know, great practical effects. If there's any visual effects, obviously obviously, but I think they said they were mostly prioritizing the practical stuff, and hats off to them for that. It just looks so good in a film when you're watching something and you can remind yourself in a positive way, like, oh yeah, and this is like real, like they just have a guy in like a makeup prosthetics doing this. That's really cool, and I really dig that. And the acting, you know, you got some solid performers here doing well. Christopher Abbott and Julia Garner, as we mentioned, I thought their kid was a solid child performance, obviously. Where we do get into some trouble, though, is that, you know, where you have actors who are, you know, good in other things and they're doing their best here. I unfortunately did not find any of these characters all that compelling. I think there's definitely some ingredients there to make it so. Like there's a certain thing with the opening of the movie, which I thought was like, you could like chop the rest of the movie off and kind of keep it as like a short film, you know, touch up some things, and you have just a Wolfman short film. They do a really good job of setting that up for the most part. They spend some time like kind of developing like this kind of like fractured relationship between young Christopher Abbott and his father. You know, he wants him to be a bit more of a man, wants you to take care of yourself. And Christopher Abbott, when he eventually becomes a father himself, you can see he's trying not to be his dad, you know? And there's even a line where he, like, I think even says to the camera, you know, you try not to be the thing that scars your kids, that you end up being the thing that scars your kids, something like that. And it's a really good line, and I honestly, I think that was like the inspiration for like the whole movie. You know what I mean? Like there's certain lines sometimes in some films where you're like, I bet this whole movie is just an excuse so this character could say this thing because the writer thought that was just really cool. And it is a good line. And you can tell that's what they kind of want to be about. The movie is paced like very briskly. It's a very quick move. So it's kind of like a more simplistic kind of film, to a point where I think it was a detriment. Like there's a certain reveal later on in the film where I was like, I could see that coming a mile away, but it doesn't seem like they want to like reflect on that a whole lot. It kind of feels like it became like a nothing thing. After the opening sequence and they show the title card and they jump to modern day, they just kind of abruptly, you know, just drop you off with Christopher Abbott, and 30 years have gone by, 30 years of development that we just don't quite see. Like there are some interesting family dynamics here, I'm sure. It's just I don't really quite feel them, and they try to get them in as quickly as possible with quick lines, and I can't really say I felt any of the drama, despite the fact that the actors are good. Julia Garner especially, like there's a point where she's like saying to Christopher Abbott, like, yeah, I think we need some bonding time, especially me and Ginger, our daughter, because she just likes you so much more, and I'm not that. And I was like, you know, you're saying this, and I'm hearing you say this. I did not feel that at all with the one scene that came right before this when you're having dinner. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't feel any of that drama. It was just something that was stated. And then even throughout the rest of the movie, there's not like any scenes where they like take strides to work towards that theme of like trying to reach a connection with a child, your own child that you feel estranged from. They don't really work with a lot of what they had. And I don't think that it helps that the movie is like so simplistic and it's like so stripped away from, like, it only takes place in this secluded house, right? And there's a bit in the beginning, they do like a Star Wars-esque kind of like opening crawl where they explain some like mythology, some kind of lore to like what the Wolfman creature is, where it came from, whatever. But then you get to this house and it's not like there's a community to explore. It's not like there's other people they can go to where they're like, oh my God, you know, like, oh, he's turning into the Wolfman or something like that. There's only one character that they meet that is kind of, it's implied that, you know, Christopher Abbott knew him as a kid, ran in the same family circle, obviously, and he's kind of been there forever, this other guy. But he's only there just so he can be in the car for them for like a minute until, you know, that thing in the trailer where the car wrecks. And then, you know, spoilers, it's in the trailer, he dies. So it's like the one little bit of like another character, just another thing to add here, add to the community that they're at. It's just gone. So it's just them in this secluded area with very limited stuff to do. At least that's what it felt like. You know, I feel like maybe there is another draft of this out there, or just another idea where you could get a lot more out of this. And it seems like the best they could come up with, just, it wasn't good enough for me. Like, there's a part where they, like, climb on top of, like, a tarp, where they're like, we'll be safe up here. And I'm sure they love the idea of the Wolfman slowly clawing at the, like, tarp thing that they're on. And they're like, oh, God, we gotta save our daughter before she falls in. But it's like, why the fuck would they even do that? Like, self-preservation, people, come on. There's even, look, okay, so, like, the initial car crash even, right? It's like, they're trying to think of what they can do to, like, increase the stakes, have these sequences. And it's like, Christopher Abbott gets into a bit of an accident because, you know, the lights flash ahead and there's something there. They don't know it's a Wolfman yet, but something is there. So much so that he swerves off the road, and you know, that's the epic crash. But it's like, man, it's nighttime and you're going on a dirt road you haven't been on in many, many years in this big ass moving truck, and you're going fast enough where when you see something just right there, you have to swerve so wildly. It's one of those things where like you get like a wall of like a cliff mountain and then just like a drop off. And it's like you were going fast enough where like you couldn't just like brake. Like, you know what I mean? It feels like, you know, they had this idea, but what they had available to them didn't necessarily support that, but they did it anyways. So there are a couple points where I thought like, man, some of this is just kind of dumb and simplistic, like we mentioned before, where it's not like there's more I can connect with the material. It's just like, I'm just watching a scene that's kind of dumb in a movie that doesn't feel like it's digging deep enough into what this could be all about. Like I said, the ingredients are all there. It's just not taking precedent with the characters, the writing of the characters, or the world itself, the stakes. Overall, though, I can't say that I dislike this very strongly. You know, like there are parts that I was like kind of in awe of. You know, like I was watching it and I was like, this is why Leigh Whannell, you know, he's one to always look out for, because he has ideas behind the camera. You know, and you can tell even when he's writing the script, there are ideas that he wants to, you know, bring forth, you know, to people, to kind of reach people on. Like, let's have an honest discussion about some of these things, you know, about like how we parent, you know, what does it mean to be like a good parent, a perfect parent? Like, what is it that you actually have to do? Or is it kind of like an impossible thing to achieve? And a lot of these ideas sound pretty interesting if you apply them to a Wolfman, but like I said, because of the nature of, I hate to say the nature of the Blumhouse production, but the nature of the Blumhouse production, where, you know, you get like very limited locations, limited budget, make it work. It just feels like they didn't quite make it for me personally. I'm gonna give Wolfman a C+. Like I said, there's a lot to admire as far as like the practical effects, some of the ways they set up some of the horror sequences. And yes, the actors are talented enough where, you know, they can elevate it just enough. I wouldn't say not enough to make it a movie that I am itching to like kind of rewatch. If it's on, I'll watch it. Like I said, it has its moments, but it's, you know, also built on a foundation that I think is a little too simplistic, and certain ways they go about these sequences, I found it just to be a little dumb. And I knew there was a part of me that was like kind of wincing at the like title crawl at the start. Like I said, lack of community, but also just like, did we really even need that? And then, you know, they do the time jump at the end, it ends abruptly, and I'm losing some development with our main character. I'm not feeling the drama as much. And there's just this random, this might sound so petty and minor, there's this random like kind of like stock footage of just like insects crawling onto another, I'm forgetting which one exactly, like ants crawling on a larger insect, taking it down. And I was just like, okay, why? You know, is that going to come into play? And I don't think it did. I don't really, like, that's something you can cut and just, you know, keep the movie going. Don't open on this. Like I said, that's a more minor petty one, but just, it goes into the whole thing of like, it seems like they're kind of like stretching, grasping at some other thing to like kind of elevate it almost. And then it just, you know, ends. The movie just kind of ends on an abrupt note. Not an abrupt note where it's like it's a problem. It's just like, that's just the movie that they were setting up, something that can end in a quick manner. So that's Wolfman. But if you've seen Wolfman already, leave your thoughts in the comments below what you thought of it. And as always, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.